quitting tech sales to become a full-time producer and DJ. It's been good. Be careful about taking something that you love and turning it into a job. A lot of what I did in tech sales helped me to develop business acumen and things that are helping me a lot now as an entrepreneur in the music space.
I've met so many people throughout my almost decade-long career in tech that got into a lucrative career track hoping that they could use that to self-fund a business or pursue their own hobby at a professional level by building up a financial nest egg. But it's so rare the older I get to actually meet someone who's willing to do that, willing to take everything that comes with that. And it's really awesome today to be able to sit down with Brandon Castro, who performs under the name Castro, who after 6 years in a tech career, left a very well-paying job to pursue being a DJ full-time. I intentionally seek out these types of conversations because I don't want to talk to someone that's 10 years down the line, super ultra successful. It's a really rare chance right now to speak to someone who's gone all in for over a year, is still trying to find their path long-term to become ultra successful, but can still relate to that person that has fears of leaving a 9-to-5 job and really learning to deal with it, both the highs and the lows. My only ask for this video is that I've actually turned ads off for this entire conversation. In the description, you're gonna find links to Castro's music. There's amazing stuff. And also the song you're hearing right now in this introduction is actually one of Castro's songs that is yet to be publicly released. So thank you, Brandon, for this conversation. Thank you for the song that's playing right now. And I know for you, if you're looking at potentially building a business on the side while working or pursuing that hobby at a more professional level, there's so many great nuggets here that I know you're gonna get a lot out of. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. What's going on?
Mr. Eric.
Yeah, here we are, man. It's really cool. I know we worked together like 7 years ago, and you meet some people that always talk about wanting to start their own thing. I feel like entrepreneurship too. Like I started in engineering in 16. I think were you 16 or 17?
17.
17. Yeah, and I feel like that was like the height of like Gary Vee. Like, who cares if you don't have a job in your 20s? You can figure it out. Like, start your own thing. Right. And I feel like so many people were like, I'm going to start my own thing, and yet. Yeah, here we are. I know, just the more you meet people that say that, it's a dime a dozen.
We did it.
Yeah, man, you actually quit corporate after being in tech sales. So excited to dive in, man. Maybe as a starting point, like, how you doing? It's been literally a year and a week since you quit, right, to be a full-time DJ. So fill us in, man.
So 1 full year to my new life, quitting tech sales to become a full-time producer and DJ. It's been good. Yeah, a lot of things that surprised me, but a lot of things that I think went according to the plan that I made and all the preparation that I made, which is really, really nice to have that those wins under my belt. And I'm just really, really happy with how things have gone so far. And it's been an adventure, to say the least. To say the least.
Take me back to as well, like, you graduate, right? I feel like in a way, you already having this DJ thing. Was there a thought when you graduated college, like, hey, I'm gonna just do this casual, like, what was the thought? And, I'm going to keep doing this for fun. I want to work to build this career. Like, has that always been the intention? Like, take us through that evolution.
Yeah, it's always been the dream. It's always been the intention. So it's been nice to have that North Star because I always knew what the end game was for me. And this influenced everything. This influenced what job I took. Would it provide the flexibility to be able to continue nurturing my music career? This influenced the people I dated. Like as soon as it got semi-serious, I made sure that it was very clear that this music dream was my number one thing always. And everyone that I've dated has been incredibly supportive of that. Influenced the people I hang out with, how I spend my time, especially my free time, and just how I, structure my day, week, month, and trying to optimize the day job to support the music dream. Yeah. So it's always been there in the forefront, which is kind of nice, having that North Star, whatever it is that you care about, helps you to align all of your decisions towards. And so if you have that, it takes a lot of pressure off your plate in terms of overanalyzing things.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you progressed your career to the point you came in as an engineer, support engineer. Shout out AEs.
Shout out. Good times.
And but then you go into tech sales. You do that for quite a while. I'm curious, as that progresses, right? Like, you quit a year ago in January.
Yes.
So talk me through the build up there. Is this multi-years, you're itching and you finally do it? How does this ultimately come out where you're like, I'm going to quit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was a combination of things. So one of them was the boring, responsible side, which is how are my savings looking? Because I'm obviously going to take a 80 to 90% pay cut going full-time music from engineering sales job, tech sales. And so it's like, do I have the savings there? Is my career in a place where I feel like I can make use of that extra time? Because I'm very fortunate to have made like pretty decent strides doing music part-time, established myself with the best clubs in town, and I was writing original music like every day basically and stuff like that. So, you know, I had good momentum, and will I have enough momentum to like be productive with that time and like make the most of it? And then also just like the time in my life, like I'm 29 now, I was 28 when I quit. And so there is a little bit of it's not a hard line, you know, the timeline on the music career, but especially with dance music, which is my world, it leans younger, and you need to be able to do the late nights and the rigorous flight schedules and stuff if you want to be like a touring artist. And so, you know, with youth in mind, that influenced me to pull the trigger basically.
Yeah. Walk us through that day, right? Like you finally decide you go in and you're going to quit, like surprise to anyone? What are you feeling like internally, right?
Yeah. So it wasn't really a surprise to anyone. And this is like a compliment to the work culture of NI, the place that we met at, and the only tech sales job that I had, because they were so supportive. I didn't have to hide who I was. I was like Brandon the musician. You know, people really supported me at work and like recognized that I had something that was as important to me as the day job, if not more important. And I really didn't have to like beat around the bush with that. Like people were open to me being super, super passionate about this, which is great. And so when the time came to like have that conversation with my boss, I actually gave him 1 year's notice. So in January of 2022, I let him know that this would be my last year working at the company, and that at the end of the year, it was time to do music full time.
Wow.
And for that whole year, we made all of the decisions together. Like, how are we going to transition my customers? How are we going to like replace my territory? It was a super, super collaborative process, which is really great. And I was never punished for giving that advance notice. I know a lot of people get paranoid about like, oh, well, if I tell my job my plans, you know, maybe they'll just terminate me right then, and then I don't have my safety net and all of that. But no, I worked, actually, they asked me to stay 2 more weeks at the very end so we could hammer out some last minute details. And I was happy to do that for them since they had provided me so much flexibility. So didn't really come as a surprise to anybody. And it allowed me a very, very graceful and gradual like ramping down of the day job, and time to like really build all of the materials that I was going to need for my launch, you know, a nicely edited video about going full time, and things like official Spotify playlist, building out my Discord community. Like I had this long list of things that I was like, I need to have all these done by day one, and the job like transition being really smooth allowed me to hit those.
Yeah. There's no part of you that wishes you did it sooner?
I mean, a little bit, but I have chosen the like not cautious, but just like more like responsible and like calculated route, I guess. You know, part of me very much wishes I dropped out of college and threw everything I had at this, and you know, made the most of those early years. But I was still working on music the whole time, and a lot of what I did in tech sales like helped me to develop like business acumen and things that are helping me a lot now as an entrepreneur in the music space. So, you know, would I go back and do it differently? Maybe, but at the same time, like I'm very, very happy with the way it's gone down, and it allows me to like comfortably and like with the utmost confidence like pursue the dream now, because I feel like I've explored the things I wanted to explore, built up a little bit of a safety net, and really refined my plan for how I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And like maybe walk me through the trade-offs too. Like obviously we can't reverse time, but do you think that like in hindsight, I know it sounds like obviously the right move, right? But what was the thought process at the time, maybe where you could have quit even earlier, maybe still work like 3 years, right? But not what, 7 or 6 years in corporate?
6.
Yeah. And so like, yeah, I guess I'm just curious on those trade-offs of like, if you think it was worth it now, maybe had you gone right out of college versus now, how does that approach change?
I mean, it would just be a little bit more of the starving artist lifestyle, you know, like less money, but more time and energy to throw at it. And I'm really, really hard on myself. And so I like have thought like, man, if I just worked harder in my early 20s, I think I could have found that jumping off point a lot sooner. But at the same time, this has been a daily thing for me for like 10 years. So it's not as if I wasn't working hard. It's just when you look back, you're like, maybe I could have squeezed a little more out of myself, or been a little more disciplined, or, stayed a little bit later in the studio, whatever it is. So yeah, I romanticize that idea of like being a super broke artist, hanging out with artists, always making music, spending time out and like meeting other creatives all the time. Like that's awesome. And I still do that a lot, but I also like live in a house that my girlfriend owns and have a in-home studio. And like, I'm able to do this from a relatively comfortable position because of the time that I spent in tech sales.
Yeah. Interesting too. That was going to be my next question around like, so I took a year off in 2019. And so like, I think if I look back on that, if anything, I maybe like pinched pennies a little too much. I was like doing everything I needed to do, but honestly, I think like too much headspace, saying like, how can I do this in the cheapest way possible? Where if I just spent an extra $100 here, an extra 100 there, it would have just made life way easier. I'm curious, like, it sounds like you're in a decently comfortable position with savings, but like first 3 months, maybe the balance is like going down now. It's not increasing. Like anything unexpected there, or like lessons learned on that front?
Honestly, it may be counterintuitive to what you're expecting, but I feel like I've actually become much more at peace with spending money in responsible ways. I used to, like you said, maybe overly pinched my pennies, just like super focused on saving and spending as little as possible. But really recently, just the past few months, I feel like I've crossed a line where it's like, no, like spend money on things that are important. Like I've been wanting to get a lot better at piano, and I've just never bought like a full size 88 key keyboard for whatever reason. And all of a sudden I realized, well, I just need to get one, and then I just need to be disciplined enough to sit down at it every day. And in 6 to 12 months time, I'll be like a decent pianist for what I'm trying to accomplish. And that would have been a financial barrier for me with my past mindset. But now it's like, no, let's do it. And, I have a friend that worked at Guitar Center. Like, let's get him to use his discount for this and stuff like that. So it's, I'm much more comfortable spending money on things that matter now, like music lessons as well. Like I want to be able to do like really basic like background vocals for my tracks and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I'm a horrible singer, so let's get some vocal lessons and stuff like that. So I've really opened up to spending money on things that matter, but I'm still incredibly disciplined on things that don't. Like I opt out of going to restaurants with my friends like quite often, or I'll eat before and just show up and hang out. And I spend time in clubs all the time. Like, that's the job. And I rarely buy drinks there just because like that's such an easy way to sink money into a bottomless pit. Bar price drinks. So yeah, I'm still disciplined on the things that I consider to be extras. Yeah.
And then maybe like the next thought for me is both at a personal level and like the objective person who is pursuing that hobby, right? Let's start at the personal level. Were there anything in this year, you give that year of resignation that like you're sweating, right? And just like procrastinating, putting off, and like you finally have to face it. I'm curious if anything was like different than you expected along that way.
I think it was just the magnitude of the new lifestyle, it's like there is going to be a new expectation, largely from myself to myself, but also from the people around me to accomplish more, to make more music, to play more shows, and just feeling that on the horizon, like it's motivating in a way. I want to rise to the occasion and be able to like show that this was a good decision to myself, to my family, to my friends, to my fans. But it's also like pretty nerve-wracking to like feel that coming. It's like if you have like a big promotion coming and you're like, obviously I want this promotion, I'm excited for it, but like, man, I'm a little underqualified. It's kind of that feeling.
Yeah, fair enough. And like I'm curious too, when you look back on the 7 years you were in corporate, like to the person that wants to quit and maybe naive to like some of these sacrifices you've had to make, like not going out, for dinner with friends, not buying drinks at the bar.
Yeah.
Like what's maybe one thing whether it was when you graduated, whether it's throughout this process, when you committed to doing this, that like someone from the outside that sees this and is like, oh, this is so cool, like doesn't expect or doesn't realize?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few like sayings that you'll hear from a lot of people, like work for yourself so that you can work twice as much, or be careful about taking something that you love and turning it into a job, because then it's a job. And so I had heard all of these things, and I was like, okay, I'm sure there's an element of truth to it. But it can be true sometimes. And you do risk taking a passion and turning it into a livelihood and like losing some of that spark. So just be confident that you like understand all of the aspects of it. Like for me, like I recognize that like social media and content creation is a very large part of being a modern artist. And that's not super motivating for me. So there were times when I would push myself to make a lot of content and I'd get like pretty burnt out and really not enjoy it. And, you know, I was sitting in front of my camera doing a video and it was like take 5 and I'm just getting like super frustrated and like not into it. And, you know, those moments I would not have foreseen because I didn't really think through like, okay, there's going to be a new expectation to create a lot more content. Yeah. So yeah, I think just understanding everything that it takes to like put your all into whatever your passion is, whatever your entrepreneurship like opportunity is, and making sure you're at peace with that and like you're ready for that. Yeah. Because it's never quite as straightforward as you think, you know. Yeah. Being a full-time musician is not just I'm gonna spend more time making music. Yeah. You know, there's researching venues, there's reaching out to tastemakers to get on Spotify playlists, you know, there's trying to get gigs in other cities by forming relationships with people that have a like sound over there. You know, there's labels and A&R and, you know, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah. So throughout that process, like what's your, if you don't mind me asking, like lowest low, whether it's while employed or this past year?
It's just like sometimes I think everybody deals with this in some magnitude, but, you know, sometimes you just get in that like depressive head state and it's like really hard to like remember the macro like picture of what's going on. So there were a few weeks where like maybe I'm just not writing good music. I'm really, really unmotivated to go to work. And you can't just wait for the spark of inspiration when it's your full-time job. You know, you kind of have to get in there and like create something no matter what. Yeah. And when art is your full-time job, it's like a lot harder, in my opinion, to show up to the music studio and work when you're like really, really out of it and uninspired than it is to like show up to like a day job and like punch some numbers in a spreadsheet when you're uninspired, you know? So it's just the difference between doing like a more mechanical task versus like a creative one when you're really out of it. And so, yeah, there was a period of time where I was feeling really bad, feeling really depressed, not making good music, but then I still had this enormous expectation of myself to like get in there, work through it, and I just like spiraled until, you know, I always hit like a localized rock bottom, and then it's funny because I'm like totally useless for like a day or two, just feeling like the worst possible, but I know I'll bounce back, and every time that happens to me, I wake up like the next day and it's like, all right, we're good. Like, let's get back to it.
Yeah, for sure. I know like one of the things when I was training, I found there was a coach for a different sport for Team USA that was like, if a third of the time it sucks and you have no motivation, a third of the time it's kind of like, and a third of the time it's great. Like that's pretty good. If you're out of that balance, then like maybe something is like needing some extra review. I don't know if that resonates at all, but
no, it's a relief if anything. I love hearing stuff like that because it reminds me that I don't have to be on 100% of the time, which is an unfair expectation that I can place on myself.
Yeah, for sure. Right on. Well, let's talk about, dude, how it's going. Like you've traveled like internationally, even when you were working, which maybe before I get too ahead of myself, I'd love to hear that experience. Cause like, even in my case, you know, I would like play a tournament in Mexico or play a tournament in Germany. And the next week I'm back in the office and everyone's like, how was your weekend? And I would just be like, good. Like, I'm not even going to talk about it. Like not even dive in there. Yeah. Like when you're getting to this point where it's getting more serious, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said there was a time you used PTO to play in Germany. Like
I wasn't playing, just traveling.
Yeah. Oh, traveling. Yeah. Okay. I got you. Fair enough. But you're performing. I know I went to shows on weeknights and all of these different things. And then you go into the office, like, was that like, I don't know, for me, like being a type A person, it's like being around other people that are content to do their job and happy with that, like more power to them. But like over time, I just like, I don't know, I can't like, it's hard to, anyway, so your experience, like what is that like as you're building your brand?
Yeah, it was definitely like a bit of a double life scenario. But as I mentioned before, I was able to be like fairly open about it. So if anything, it was just like people always making comments like, I don't know how you do it, you know, staying out late on the weekends all the time, or like maybe they tease me or give me grace on Mondays if I'm looking like really beat up. But yeah, it's just like a polar opposite flip on the weekends. You know, it's like weekdays, like wake up at a responsible time, go to work, do my job, and then, you know, as early as Thursday, often Friday, Saturday, like play a show, be out really late. I mean, sometimes I'm playing till like 3 a.m. So then, you know, not getting like enough sleep. I have a parrot who wakes me up in the morning. So it's like, I can't like fully flip my sleep schedule and just expect to like sleep through the afternoon. So yeah, sometimes that would take a toll on me, like going back and forth between like really major like sleep cycles and just like being exhausted from living those two very different lives. But I would normally be back in action by like Tuesday. Yeah. and a big part of it is just like don't drink a lot, honestly. Like right. The body can sustain like changes to sleep schedule like pretty easily if you're not like getting plastered. Right. Which yeah, I try not to when I'm playing.
Yeah, right on. Mm-hmm. Well, like looking forward, man, 2024 and beyond, like are you completely detached from corporate now? Is in the back of your mind, is there always that safety net, or is that like beyond off the radar now?
Probably not. Yeah. It's nice knowing that I could. Mm-hmm. Like it's nice to have that, I guess, that trump card if I really need it. But I'm still doing pretty good. Honestly, last year I haven't run the final numbers, but I think I like basically broke even on living expenses and like what I made through music, which is incredible for a year one of doing this. So it's nice to know I can go back if I need to. I still have the electrical engineering degree. I still have the experience. You know, the resume would need some fine tuning, but but you know, I can do it if I need to, but it's not a plan.
So yeah, I know we were talking like before we started recording about, you know, this year you're kind of evolving your style. I wouldn't say changing it, but I'd love to have you kind of like lay out your evolution, the kind of music you're making now, why you're making it, and I'll leave it open-ended for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have developed a reputation as like the deep house, progressive house guy here in Austin, which is really cool. I played at a club called Kingdom that was the best club in town for many years, and I would be paired with these international touring acts that sound like me. So I would open up for them, and their fans would become my fans, and I got to meet a few of them, and that's like kind of how I grew my career initially. And so after playing with, you know, people like Eric Prydz or Lane 8, then I started to like be associated with them here in town, and I really loved that sound, and so that was perfect for me. It's like awesome, like people think of me in the same breath as these heroes of mine. But my sound has changed a bit over the past like couple of years. I've been getting more into like a slightly more like European sophisticated sound, I guess. Really into a lot of stuff coming out of the UK right now, where they're blending like these like indie dance, slightly poppy, but then like grittier, like there's a genre called UK garage that's like really cool. And so they're doing really innovative stuff over there that's like really inspiring to me. So I had this like cognitive dissonance moment where I realized that a lot of my network and my reputation and the labels that I thought I was dreaming to release on were in this like deep and progressive space, and all of a sudden everything I was writing and everything I was inspired by was in this like new like UK space. I was like, oh, what do I do? Like, you know, my plans are all for naught because I've like changed my sound so much. But I just needed a little recalibration. Actually, literally yesterday, I did this like really big exercise where I figured out what my new target labels are, found like a bunch of new artists that sound like me, and I'm feeling like good and motivated about that again. Yeah. So just gotta change the local reputation now, and then I think we'll have checked all the boxes on my transformation.
Yeah. Well, and I'd love to dive into like the realities too of you doing this and kind of like handling every aspect of your career now, because I know not only I'd love to tap into the process where you're realizing this, you're finding new potential labels to go after, but I also know that you're planning to potentially move here, a very high likelihood to a major hub, whether Chicago, New York, London, all of these different things. I'll start with right now and kind of what you did, and I would love to tap into, hey, you moved to New York like day one. How are you attacking it, you know?
Oh man, I mean, it would be a whole new world of figuring out what clubs that are aligned with my sound, you know, who the local tastemakers are. And thankfully I have a decent network in New York. I have a number of friends that are producers there, and I have gone there many times and gone out there many times. So I like have the short list, but knowing the clubs and knowing how to get established with the clubs are two totally different things. So I think that would probably be my first step. Just like a a sales like target list where you're like, these are the companies I want to talk to. Do I have any connection to them? Like, how do I avoid going in the front door? You know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really, I do the same approach for music, both labels and like clubs that would be like potential like gigging opportunities for me.
Yeah.
Is where's the spot? How do I get in? What's the status of that?
Yeah.
So that would probably be step one, break out the old spreadsheet and take it from there.
Yeah, and I know we've talked in the past about how you kind of network internally here through maybe not the front door, but other doors.
Yeah, definitely.
So whatever you're comfortable sharing there in terms of the types of ways. But yeah, like what's the reality of like, I don't want to make this cheesy and be like, these 3 things really helped me from my career, but you know, did that set you up to cold approach someone and just like really try and get your brand felt, where maybe a true artist that doesn't have that business muscle maybe is lacking?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a huge value add. Like really, really big differentiator is having that experience and having that comfort and having those styles of conversations. It's kind of a tragedy that so many good artists not only don't have that muscle, but like actively dislike that kind of activity, and it becomes really hard to sell yourself. And so they're experts at staying in their bedroom and writing like incredible music, but then when it comes time to sell themselves and like as a brand and sell themselves as like, you know, an asset to a label or a management company or something like that, you know, they get nervous or shy away from those kind of opportunities. And so it's really nice to have the experience and be comfortable like approaching people and recognizing like super sales basics, like here's the value that I have to provide to you because I know what your incentives are and I know what you care about, kind of thing. Like a lot of artists are like, yeah, I would love to play that club, but like, what do you have to offer them? You know, it's like, are you going to bring out people? Are you going to be the absolute perfect style fit for the night? You know, like how are you thinking bigger than what you want, and you're thinking about how you play a role in a successful night in the nightlife industry.
Yeah.
And so that like method of thinking that I picked up through the sales career has like really, really helped me, and I think differentiates me when working with these club owners, because I see it much more as like a partnership, even if it's just one night at a time, versus I'm sure other artists just come and play and then come back to collect their check.
Yeah.
So I really want like the mutually best outcome every single time I play a gig, and work really hard for that.
Yeah. No, that's a cool perspective. And like, I'm going to try and phrase this question based on my own experience, because I'm curious if there's a line like, as you build a following, as you are kind of evolving your music. For me, even having this channel, like we reach these inflection points where whether it's partners that reach out to us, want us to promote their stuff, and we don't want to because that kind of compromises our brand for one way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Are there those lines for you as an artist where maybe you're not, compromise is a strong word, but like you wish it could be more authentic and artistic and purely focused on that, but you've kind of had to, again, compromise for lack of a better word, and just like do things that are very uncomfortable and you don't want to do? I don't know if that sheds light.
There's an exact parallel actually. Yeah. So when I was working the day job and doing music, I was able to be incredibly selective about what gigs I took. So I mentioned Kingdom earlier, and there were a few other clubs, Ethics, and people doing really, really high value like underground parties, this group called Vibe Vessel. And so I was able to only take those. Like basically anytime I got on stage, it was like a guaranteed crowd or a guaranteed like reputation boost or like street cred, you know? And so it was easy for me to cherry pick my opportunities for things that were like really, really good for me. But now that this is how I pay my bills, you know, this is kind of like the commoditization of, you know, gigging, is like there are times that I've taken gigs that, you know, they're not super passion gigs. They're I played like a little like block party at some neighborhood that was being built and stuff like that, because it's like a friend refers you in and there's like money on the table to be taken. It's like all I have to do is show up and like play some music. And I still, like, to my previous statement, I still very much like do my best, but it's not the music that I'm producing, and it's not the music that I'm passionate about. And so I've actually spent considerable time fleshing out my library in different directions to play gigs like that this year, like more loungy, like style music. I mean, I've brought in a lot of like indie bands that I'm into, like, you know, stuff like Tame Impala, that is like, yeah, I really love this music and it's good for like a more accessible, like non-dance oriented crowd. And I would have never had a chance to play that in the clubs, but now that I'm playing these mixed audience parties where it's more just about background music and setting a vibe versus like commanding a dance floor, I'm able to like play stuff like that. So yeah, that I wouldn't say it's been a major like compromise, you know, but it has been something that I probably wouldn't have elected to spend my time doing if I didn't need to make money through DJing.
Yeah. No, it's funny because like you got my brain going around. This is parallel and may or may not relate to your situation, but like even when we first started this YouTube, the goal was to basically give like a free, the fact that people were paying thousands of dollars for boot camp was insane. I was like, I can just make this a couple weekends on video.
Yeah.
And then the more you get into it, you realize like, actually, if I'm going to provide this level of support, it's going to take months. And then actually, if I'm going to do this, then like we kind of have to pay for it. And then you get a following and people are like asking for your time all the time. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is like when I first started, maybe I was naively like a little bit renegade-ish and like, I'm going to do this because I should and everyone's going to love that.
Yeah.
And then you kind of face the realities and also realize at certain times, to what you were already saying, like there's a mix between making what's purely authentic to you and unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you see it, and this is maybe where the root of the question is, is like you also have to take that and kind of mold it to things that people consciously or subconsciously already want.
Yes.
And maybe just be the first to expose it to them. But I'm just like curious if that process relates to your music at all. Maybe were you the naive artist that thought, I'm just going to make cool shit and figure it out, and now it's changed? Like just walk me through that from your vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, the parallel is 100% there.
Yeah.
And it's a little bittersweet with music because there is a route to success where you stick 100% to like the world that's in your head and you create something that no one's ever heard before and you find an audience that cares about it. I think of like Porter Robinson as like a famous example of like doing that with his Worlds album. But the majority of the time, familiarity is needed in the equation to like build that initial audience or like, meet the audience where they are and do something that they are more open to like experiencing. And so that happens with my songwriting a lot where I'll have like a core hook or a core idea of a song. And this year I've spent a lot of time like studying the nuances of different genres because a lot of the time with dance music specifically, like you can take the same core idea and just kind of change like the drums on it and the tempo and like a few minor details and you can make it a totally different genre. And the labels are looking for things that are like puzzle pieces that will fit into the other songs that they have on their labels because dance music is unique and that these songs are DJ'd together. So you want something that's unique and bring something new to the table, but it also needs to be similar enough that it will play nice with the other songs in its genre. So having those similarities is like really, really important. And so I've been studying like, okay, I've wrote all this music. I've always felt like I'm like a bit of a black sheep and like I don't know exactly where I fit in. And it's like, okay, well maybe if I just change the way I'm sequencing my hi-hats, all of a sudden now it's a little techier and groovier and all of a sudden it opens up like this whole segment of the dance music market that I can like be DJ'd with versus like I was so unique that I was kind of like isolating myself. And I don't feel like it's compromised like the creative vision of anything I'm doing because to me the creativeness comes in the melodies and the harmonies and like the hook, not really in the sequencing of the drums as much. So no, that's awesome, dude. It's really funny because I feel like there, and maybe I'm just like still naively holding on to this idea that I'll just get to a place where I can create whatever I want, but I do feel it's kind of been this weird thing where it's like in the beginning people love you because you are the person in your home studio or on your couch that's just keeping it real. Yeah.
And you get that like core following. But then you reach that inflection point where if you want to keep doing this like at a full-time level, you have to make those kind of adjustments. But then also, I feel like there's also a inflection point where you get so big at that point, you can actually go back to creating your own style.
Yeah,
so
no, 100%.
Maybe I'm naive, but it's just
I think it's exactly that. And actually, the person I brought up earlier, Porter Robinson, is an example of doing that because he blew up when he was like in high school, making like electro house during like the EDM boom of like 2010, 2012-ish in America. And it was like this like gritty, aggressive, loud, compressed sound that was like really, really hot in the festival circuit. And so he blew up doing that and like went to like national level like stardom like really, really fast. But then he took that big influx in support and in fan support and like went into his shell for a bit, and everyone's like, where's Porter? And then he came back with something that sounded 100% different and cemented himself as a true like innovator in the scene. And so I think the familiarity helps when you're getting off the ground, because it helps to encourage people to give you a chance, and it helps to find an established audience to like not steal fans from, but to gain fans from. And then once you have that, like I'd say initial level of support, then people are going to look to you. Like you said, they're going to look to you to like provide something new. You know, I don't want a new version. I want like a whole new chapter. And so I think that's how it works for a lot of artists, where they get their start like creating complementary songs, and then they truly innovate once they kind of get off the ground.
Yeah. What have been maybe like one or two of your favorite pieces that you've created, and why?
Man, that's a good question. I just finished one. I always have recency bias for this kind of thing, but I just finished one that I feel like is the most like full package song that I've wrote in quite a while. Like every piece of it is complementary to the others. Like the drums are like super groovy and driving, but not overpowering. And then the melodies are like really, really lush, but like not so much that it can't be played in a club. And I just feel like it's striking the balance that I really, really want to find for my music. And so it's an encouraging reminder that I'm going in the right direction. But that's still unreleased. So
yeah.
Maybe we can play that on the intro or the outro or something.
Hell yeah. That'd be awesome. And let me ask you too, if this is a fair question and makes sense, when you say it's the most complete, how much of that is like your internal compass versus like, I've done all this research, to your point, aligning this to a portfolio of a potential label that's interested? How much, like, what's that mix of internal validation versus external?
It's definitely both, but probably internal. But internal is guided by like, you know, the research I do on labels and just listening to so much music all the time. Yeah. It's like when I hear that new song of mine, it's like, wow, yeah, this one like really fits. Like I've been producing music at a professional level for a while, but where I've stood to improve is in the like compelling nature of it, and like how strong the melody is. Like, does the hook get stuck in your head? Does it make you feel something? You know, it's like kind of a cheesy like artistic trope, but it's true. Like there's a lot of filler dance music that's just a beat and like a vocal sample, and will it work in a club? Maybe, but like, are people going to selectively go and listen to it on Spotify? No, because it's just a club tool. And I'm trying to find something that lives between those two worlds. It moves an audience when played live at loud volume, but it also is something that you want to listen to on your own when you're just like hanging out around the house or you're at the gym or something like that.
No, it's an awesome thread. And I know like one of the things we've been talking about also before we started recording, at least in my situation, I know there's some parallels for you. It's like you get to an element where you've got a portfolio of work, you've got some followers, some fans that really love what you do and know about you. And then the game to some extent transitions also to the distribution. Yeah. Like, and obviously shameless plug, but like to everyone watching, I turned ads off on this entire video specifically so we can put Brandon's stuff in the description. So check it out if you've made it this far. Awesome stuff.
Thank you.
But I'd love to tap into like your perspective as well. I know boots on the ground, you've talked a lot about getting into clubs. You've talked about aligning your portfolio to labels, but now there's also the part of, you know, maybe you can only sell, if you will, so much one-on-one. Like at some point, you've got to find ways to get that distribution. Yeah. How are you seeing that now? And also, yeah, let's just start there. I've got a ton of questions. So.
Yeah. So the distribution aspect is where the labels come in. So I'm writing original music, and I want it to be heard by an audience. And so the labels have that audience, but I need to provide a song that they think pushes the label in the right direction, but is also, as I mentioned before, you know, plays nice with, is a compatible jigsaw puzzle piece to the stuff that they already release. And so the best labels these days are actually like this whole universe of like distribution. So it's not only do they pay your distribution fees to get your stuff on like Spotify and Apple Music, but now they're also hosting their own festivals, or at the very least like showcases, where they'll invite you because you're a part of the label, and now you're performing in front of their fan base instead of just like distributing music to them. And then some also have like in-house management and booking agent teams, and so it's like the labels hold that like the fan base that you so desperately need, and they're like also building up like even more infrastructure to like help support their artists and help break their artists in and help to like extend their careers as far as possible and into new avenues. So that's like the traditional way. It is easier than ever to self-distribute your music. You can pay, I think it's like $20 a release. It's really cheap on like DistroKid or like CD Baby, and they'll put it on all the major streaming platforms, and you retain 100% of the royalties, whereas the average label contract is like 50-50. So if you collaborate on the song with someone else, like you're looking at 25% of your royalties, which is not a lot. Not that there's any money to be made in streaming underground dance music anyway. But so yeah, self-distribution is something that more and more people are doing. It's actually been like kind of interesting to see, but like all of the like new school, like Austin artists that I'm seeing popping up are like exclusively doing that. Like really? These guys don't do anything with labels. They just make their own artwork and they upload it, and they pay for playlisting services or Spotify ads and stuff like that. And they're just doing it 100% in-house. And I'm mixed on it. I think it's like really cool to have that empowerment to do it yourself. But at the same time, that whole infrastructure side of like the good labels that I mentioned before, you are on the hook to build a replacement for that if you're doing this on your own. And so I think the ceiling is a lot lower when you're doing it on your own. But in some situations, like maybe you're just trying to get your work out there on the internet for people to hear, and you don't really care a lot about the next hit single or anything like that. Like I just want my music out so I can send people a link to Spotify and they can hear it, and I can start to build like a small reputation, even just locally. Like it's a perfect situation to use self-distribution for. But if you think you have something that's really, really good that will resonate with a lot of people, then you probably need that established fan base and that established distribution channel of a label to help you.
And like, it's interesting to hear you talk about the labels, because I'm curious too, like at this point for an aspiring artist or someone who's just curious, like in my mind, I have no insight into this world. What element, so you mentioned aligning the music to the portfolio, maybe from a label, if I'm an executive of a label, if that's fair to say. Yeah. Like, is there an element of it too that they want to see that you have been cutting your teeth for like 5 to 7 years? You do have a portfolio of music, even if the older stuff doesn't necessarily align to what they want. Yeah. Like, does that factor in? Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah. So it kind of goes both ways, which is interesting and maybe a little counterintuitive. So sometimes they want a fresh artist so that they can help them create their narrative and their story and their brand. So the less paint on the canvas, the more that the like team can help you paint, right? And so in some ways, these like young generational talent, like 20-year-old producers that blow up are like super, super valuable for that reason, because they have talent and they have like drive, and they just need someone to help put all the pieces together. And this is how pop stars used to break, is like, this is why so many Disney Channel like people become musicians, because if you are a little bit to a lot of it talented, and someone that really understands the music industry sits down with you and says, we're going to make this happen, there's a decent chance you're going to make it happen. And so for that reason, like young artists without a lot of baggage, which is like a very unfair term to use, can be valuable. But at the same time, like you need to be ready to capitalize on an opportunity. Like I have a friend that works with the very prestigious Anjuna Deep, and he has said that he's really happy he didn't blow up sooner, because he didn't think that he'd be able to meet the expectations if he wasn't as mature and disciplined as he was when it happened. Because if you do have like a single get signed and really well received, the label's probably going to turn around and say, let's do an EP. And like, do you have 4 tracks ready? Can you make 4 tracks in a month? There's going to be a suddenly time pressure, whereas it's very possible you have worked entirely devoid of time pressure through your entire like artist career so far. And so like being ready to meet that expectation, like that's a big part of it. And so that's where experience and maturity and backlog comes into play, which are things that those young artists won't have. So those are like 2 different stories that are both very real, but like you won't be the same person in both stories, right?
Yeah. How do you think at this stage that if you know, when you do ultimately blow up and have the single and the EP, like, do you envision a way that you do that that's authentic? Is there a scenario where you get picked up and yeah, you're huge now, but it's not in a way you want? Like, maybe that's too hypothetical of a question. I'm just curious.
I would hope that whichever direction I like see like the biggest impact on, it will be something that I like care about, you know? Because I do write. I'm getting better at staying more focused now, but for the longest time, for many years, I was writing in a wide variety of styles. I would write like this tribal banger, and then something really deep, lush, and progressive, and then this like 8-minute epic that slowly evolves the whole time. And then this one has like really bright piano chords, and it was fun, and I learned a lot from that year-long exercise of dabbling in many genres. But it meant that I didn't have like the Castro sound. Like, it wasn't exactly clear what like I sounded like, even to myself. And so at this point, I'm writing in a more narrow way, but I'm also like very at peace with the idea of whenever I see like a really good public response to something that I release, like I'm okay tailoring a little bit more that direction, because again, I don't think it compromises my integrity to like structure my drums a certain way, but I'm still going to be writing like melodies that are like true to myself, or like sampling the way that I like to sample. Yep. So yeah, I actually really welcome that outside feedback, because I think it'll help me to rein in all of these different ideas that I have in my head, and like give me a little bit of focus.
Castro, Brandon, it's been awesome. And a few questions to close it out. One, like obviously wanted to have this conversation, would have in general, but I think for so many people that want to build something on the side, like to just see more real people that are doing it is awesome. So I'd love to start with that question in terms of like, for anyone that does have that passion project they're actively putting time towards already outside of their day job or outside of school, thoughts? I'll leave it open-ended.
Yeah, keep it up. Keep it up. Having passions is like so important. Like, and you don't necessarily have to turn it into a full-time thing at any point, but just keep yourself interested in whatever it is you're interested in. Like, you know, I feel like there's a lot of pressure to either turn a hobby into a full-time job, or a lot of pressure to hyper optimize your career and climb the corporate ladder and whatever. And like, I think more people should find peace and happiness in like just being a well-rounded person, you know? Like, you can be creative and technical and like care about your job, and neither one of those has to overpower the others, right? And if you are working on that side gig and you aspire to turn it into a full-time thing, just be prepared for your relationship with it to change. It doesn't have to be in a bad way. You know, some people say don't quit your day job because it takes the magic out of whatever like artistic thing you care about. But I've enjoyed the process of going full-time music. And I know a lot of other people, you know, it was the dream that they were hoping for, but just make sure that you think really, really deep on what it's going to be like when you need to pay your bills through whatever it is that you care about, if that's woodworking or music or whatever.
Yeah. Maybe an interesting question that just came to mind too is like, how would you define this a success, and how would you define it a failure?
My journey specifically? Yeah. That is really interesting. I think that at a certain point, like not having like a number of musical releases would feel like a failure to me, but I've also grown even more patient with my journey this year, such that I've redefined success as, am I living a creative life, and do I feel like an accomplished musician? And like day to day, that looks totally different, but you know, I'm writing more music, and I'm meeting more creatives, and I'm reading more books, and like there's all kinds of like things that go into feeling fulfilled in that way. But I'm being less focused on the things I can't control. Like, there's only so much I can control in terms of labels being interested in my music. Did they even open my email? You know, yeah. Like there's so many factors that go into like putting out music and having it be well received. So I'm focusing on what I can focus on, which is, do I feel creative? Am I putting in the time? And like, am I happy?
Yeah.
And those are really the big three for like, am I being successful in my eyes?
Castro, thank you, man. It's
My
been a
brother.
great conversation, man.
Yeah, this was really cool.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Excited to see what happens for us both. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on in this beautiful studio here, downtown Austin, Texas.
Yeah, of course, man. All right. We'll see you soon.
Cheers.